Well, it's Wednesday night, and Shane, you're looking different.
I know,
It's
right?
yeah, it's Andy Wood again.
What is going
And
on, everybody?
yeah, well, thanks for doing this with me, Andy. It's Shane's off week, so no better person to throw in here than the super technical minded genius of Andy Wood.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Stop it now. You got the best intro out of any channel. I'm just saying.
Oh, really? You like that?
I do. I like both of them. I like all of them.
Well, good. We got quite a few people in here already, so I want to run through the list. We got Max Wedge Dick Dastardly, who has the YouTube's greatest screen name. Colleen Tebow, Clint Street Machines, and Clint is here representing Clayton's Toolbox. Buick Smith, Fab Race Mod Repeat, which is Chris Cox at Northeast Dragway. Rick Salmon, Dead Pedal Motors, Mexican Spec, and I think that's it for the evening. That's who's in here so far. There's only 12 watching, so there must be something big going on somewhere.
Must be.
Yeah, we're usually a lot more than this, to tell you the truth. But so how did everybody like the thumbnail? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
That would be epic to do that.
What's that?
To actually build a car like that, like it was in the Monsters.
Oh, the Dragula?
Dragula.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I ever told, well, I probably didn't tell many people this. Let's see. When I got stationed in Hawaii, I had school in San Diego for like 6 months. And when I drove from San Diego from where I was stationed at before, which was Gulfport, Mississippi, out to San Diego, I didn't have a place to stay for a couple of days. So I just crashed in the back of my truck. And I figured, wow, while I'm here, why don't I go see the Peterson and, like all those things you take in on Sunset Boulevard or whatever it was.
Right.
Wilshire Boulevard. That's what it is. So go to Hot Rod, get a tour. And this was back when Hot Rod and Carcraft and all that was really cool.
Big. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, of course, they wouldn't give me a tour at Hot Rod Magazine. There was no one there. They were doing Drag Week or something. And then said, but the Peterson's right next door. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go over to the Peterson and I'm walking around. I'm checking out all the stuff. They got a couple of drag cars. They got a couple of neat hot rods, stuff like that. And I get up to the top floor and it's like, there was literally no way. There was like a Monday afternoon, right? There was no one in the place. And when I got up to the top floor, they got like a bunch of Fast and Furious racer cars and stuff up there. I'm like, what the heck? So I started checking them out and looking around, and next thing you know, there's the Munsters mobile on it. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, that is so awesome. Like I've never seen this thing up close and personal. And then who would you believe came out and was like, hey, what you think of that Munster mobile? And I turn around and it's freaking George Barris.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And they were selling off like, I don't know, half of these movie cars. And that's what that was a private auction. And it was going to be happening on like Saturday, but this was like a Monday or a Tuesday. And they haven't sold anything yet. So it's going on at the end of the week. But they're loading all the cars in. And George Barris himself was up there and like, hey, and his, I don't want to say he had like a brother and then a couple of guys that worked at their shop, but they were all loading these cars in. And it was like, I'm checking out the Monster Mobile and they bring in the Dragula and they bring in like, the Batman car, like the original 60s Batman cartoon, looking that Lincoln that they cut up. But it was all just like super cool, like everything from when I was a kid.
So how was George Barris getting talking to him?
He was pretty busy because they were loading in a lot of the cars. I mean, he was showing me around some of this stuff and like, and I asked him like, how did you do this? And he's like, oh, well, way back when, Craker used to offer a wheel with like a freaking 1/2-inch back spacing, and we used a 1/2-inch back spacing. And I said, well, how'd you get to be the king of the customizers doing, like movie stuff? And he's like, we didn't start with movie stuff. We started at the same time, that Ed Roth was like big. And he's like, we were the only guys in Southern California that had the car. like the your finger on the pulse for the automotive genre, when cars were hitting big in SoCal. And the
Wow.
cool thing was he was like, we were just in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. So
That
let's
is,
see. I know it's something that's like that's where I always started to when I got to be um like stationed in certain places, I started taking in the local car history stuff, right?
mm-hmm.
And like Hawaii. Okay, I was stationed in Hawaii for about 4 years, and I would go to the drag strip out there. And if you didn't know this, but I mean, like drag racing was huge in the early '60s in Hawaii, huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only was Prudhomme, and
Rolling
um,
Leon.
well, Prudhomme and Roland Leong met out there at that drag strip when they opened it, right? And that's where they went on to be the what was it? What did he do? The Hawaiian Dragster? Was it the
Yeah.
Hawaiian Dragster? The Flying Hawaiian Dragster? Um, but that's when those two met up out there. But I had heard some rumors at the drag strip that there was some old drag cars in the junkyards, and so I went and checked it out. Well, lo and behold, the Goldfinger altered wheelbase Dodge that gets wrecked like at Lions or that was in the junkyard, right? This
Really?
altered wheelbase Dodge that you would like cut your arm off for, is just laying
Wow.
in the junkyard in Waianae. Um,
About
I
what
did
year
find
was this?
uh 2005 or six, I guess.
Man.
But and that so I talked to the guy that ran the junkyard, and he had a whole bunch of altereds, fuel altereds, that he was just building in this. It was a Quonset hut. Like you know what a Quonset hut is? With that round topped silver buildings that the government used to build everywhere.
Yeah.
He had a Quonset hut, but he had a bunch of altereds in there, and I thought it was so cool. Here you are racing back in the '60s. But also, while I was over there on Craigslist, was a guy selling the. Oh man, what is that dude's name? Who's the guy that did the aero cars? The first dude that did the aero cars that went out in the desert, got high as hell on LSD, and then dreamt up all these aerodynamic cars. Damn, I can't remember his name, but they were selling one of those bodies out there in California or in Hawaii. It was in some dude's carport, hanging from the rafters. Right. Um,
That's
Don
correct.
Garlitz had the other body. It was like a gold, or it was a black streamliner that he did, and it was like a funny car body on a dragster. I can't remember the name of that guy, but maybe somebody will chime in here and say what it is. But yeah, that kind of stuff. Hawaii was steeped in hot rodding tradition, and now it's just all run by a bunch of liberals, so they don't care. They even closed the drag strip on Oahu while I was over there. So
Really?
yeah,
So there's no drag strip there no more.
not on Oahu. There's one in Maui, and there's one in Kauai. But
Man.
Oahu, where everybody's at, no bueno. So Buick Smith says he fired up his GS for the first time this year. Traded some stuff the other day for a 204R for the GS. Hope to get it in next month sometime. We'll be swapping axles to 256 to a 323. Man, that 204R has such a deep overdrive, dude. I would put like a 342 or a 373 gear in that
At
thing.
least.
Yeah, it's got a deep overdrive, like 0.67. So you're gonna be happy with low RPMs regardless. Dead Pedal Motor says having to watch on mute. Chat watching though. Well, hopefully something comes up pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Michael Schmidt says some BS going on here. One exit away from home and my suburban rear tire explodes. I'm watching you all on the side of the road. AAA on the way.
Oh man, my heart goes out to you, buddy.
Yeah, that sucks. I tell you what though, AAA membership is like kind of worth the cash, especially if you're a gearhead and you drive piles of junk. Right, totally worth it. All right. So Colleen is asking, Andy, what jet size would you recommend for a stock 318 with a Holly 650?
If it's a double pumper, a 4777, I think that's it. It'll be probably a 65 or 66 jet in the primary, and it'll be 72s in the secondary, most likely.
All right.
Yeah, if it's like a 600 at 1850, it'd be a 64, 65 jet in the primary.
Hmm. Well, I'm getting the pleasure of working on a real original Carter AFB.
Really?
So, yeah, I'm not too good with them. I'm not good at them at all.
Dude, I'll tell you what. Okay, so I got a confession to make. After the Sleeper 408, you have convinced me, and I've witnessed Quadrajet magic. Okay, like my buddy Joe wanted to keep his Quadrajet on his engine, and he sent it off to a guy by the name of Dean Oliver. Have you ever heard that name?
No, but there's a lot of dudes that do them for stock eliminator stuff.
Yeah, so he's one of those guys, and man, he spent like $700 sending this carburetor off. And when I got it back, I was looking at the things that he did. Man, he did some really, um, really cool things. And so when we put it on the dyno, man, dude, that thing ran so good. I mean, the transition to wide open throttle, the
It
air
didn't bog.
door. No, I mean, air door transition is perfect. And we made 480 horsepower and 494 pound-feet of torque with that thing.
Yeah.
I
They
mean,
like vacuum. That's the biggest downfall of them is they like vacuum. And people would try to put them on stuff with a big hog ass cam, right? Pulling 3 inches of vacuum at idle. But it requires that primary piston in there requires
yeah,
a vacuum signal. And you have to have something moving those metering rods up and down, or it's either pig rich or it's so lean all the time it won't run.
yeah.
But the more vacuum signal they have, the better. And that thing was what? How many cubes? 406, 408.
408.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, it was
40 over
plenty
400.
big. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was plenty big, making lots of vacuum signals. So
And the cam was only 224 at 50, so it's a small cam.
right, but they were running the biggest head they could on that combo, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's AFR 195, what we
That's
put on it.
that's a good head. Let's see. Colin Tebow says it's a single pumper running 62 jets, still pig rich.
Where's it
All right.
pig rich at?
You
At
know what?
idle?
I've seen this kind of stuff before. Here's my 2 cents. Check
Yep.
the power
Go ahead.
valve.
Bingo.
Yeah. If you've backfired that sucker one time or popped up through the carb, I bet you it's popped that power valve.
Or this can happen too, especially on older Hollies. The meter and block gasket will transfer fuel across the circuits because it's not sealing good. You know what I'm saying? If you take that gasket off and you don't see perfect imprints of the wells in the meter and block, you've got issues.
Yeah. Well, I would, I would have to say, look at that power valve first. If it's not
Start
that,
there.
yeah. If it's not that, start looking what Andy's telling
It,
you.
it should not be running pig rich at 62 jets in it. No.
No, especially not even at an idle
Yeah.
because it's on a completely different circuit, right? And usually when they blow the power valve is when that doesn't matter anymore.
It's just dumping fuel all
Yeah.
the time.
Yep. All right. Fab Race Motor Pete said Andy took the Spirit Trail out to the desert and came back liking Q junks. Well, he's
You know,
impressed with the.
I've always hated quarter junks, but now it's kind of like I have this weird affection for it. And so now it's got me wanting to mess with a thermoquad to see what that's like.
Well, it's the way I look at them is it's the carburetor. That's the American dream, right? It
Yeah.
came on everything. They're everywhere. They cost nothing to rebuild, and everyone hates them. And it's like if you can make one work, you are king dingling running around because you got parts galore. Nobody
Yeah.
wants them, right? And then the rebuild kits are $24. 24 bucks.
The thing that impressed me the most throughout the dyno pulls, it averaged 12.4 to 12.2 air fuel ratio. It was a tad rich. If we would have had some rods, I could have leaned it out a little bit,
Man,
make a little bit more power. But man, it maintained the entire fuel curve throughout the RPM range. I mean,
Where was it rich? Wide open throttle?
no, I mean, wide open throttle. What I'm saying is, from the start of the dyno pull until the end, it maintained the same air fuel ratio throughout the entire RPM range. That is
Okay.
so hard to do with a carburetor. Y'all just don't know.
Well, especially on the Quadrajet because it's all secondary at that point.
Yeah, but like it would have been perfect if I would have had a different set of rods.
Yeah, well, I had all the rods you would ever want.
Yeah,
Um,
I
I got
might
a
get
little
some when
fishing
I come
tackle
out
box
there. I
full.
might get some from you because when I head to Coates, whenever that is, I plan on stopping by your place and bringing you those rocker arms and stuff.
Oh, yeah, and that high gear drum set, huh?
Yeah,
Uh, I need to. I guess I need to get hot and get the tranny out of that T-bird. Well, I guess I don't know if it matters, but
doesn't matter, but we don't take long to change it.
yeah, well, it takes long to get it out. Let me tell you, that sucker's
It
crammed in there, and then the headers are on it are Hedman Cleveland 4-barrel headers for a 9.2 deck Cleveland. So when you
yeah,
got a 9.5 deck Windsor, they're tight.
everything gets tighter.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like you got to literally grease stuff up to get it in there. Yeah. There's not a lot of room in that thing. But let's see. Buick Smith says 2154 RPM at 80 miles an hour with 27-inch tire. Perfect for what I want. I want it for flying across Montana. Speed limit is 80 in Montana. 2553 RPM in third for the rest of the time on 60-mile-an-hour roads in North Dakota. Manual lockup. Okay. Well, I tell you what, if you ever get a chance to drag race it with manual lockup's cool because once you hit second, lock that sucker up. Get rid of all that slip. Uh, but then the good thing about the 204R is it doesn't have that super deep first gear like the 700 or the 4L60E.
It's like a 275 first gear, right?
Yeah, I think it's similar to like Turbo 350.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I know like the 700s, man, they're like what, a 309 or something?
306, yeah, I think so.
306?
Yeah. Let's see. Calling Tebow saying it's a 6.5 power valve. We'll pull it apart and see. Well, I'm not saying that the power valve is the wrong size. I'm saying that what happens is they usually blow that power valve. If you ever popped it up through the carburetor, it'll blow that power valve.
Well, and I've also seen it the diaphragm deteriorate from the ethanol too, if it's an
Oh,
older power valve.
yeah. And well, I guess I should say that's my Holly knowledge, and it's all based on Hollies from the '90s, which in the early 2000s they came out with
Yeah.
a power valve saver, which is like a blow off valve essentially.
Yeah. It's a little check ball.
Man, somebody's blowing by my house on their little Banshee. Let's see. John Wilburn says also there's a gasket that doesn't seal the power valve. Wrong gasket for that application. That will cause it to dump fuel too. So yeah, check out your gasket. Okay. Let's see. Dead Pedal Motor says discussion Edelbrock or Holly Carb for pre-80s daily driver.
Depends on what you want. I mean, yeah, Holly parts are dime a dozen, but the Edelbrocks are really pretty forgiving as far as put it on there, get it set, and drive it. You really don't have to tinker with it. So
Yeah, the Edelbrock is really just a
AFB.
updated version of the Carter AFB, and those came factory on everything all the way up to like 1965.
You know
Um,
what one of my favorite carburetors is, and I ain't even done a video on one, is the AVS2, the
oh,
it's like the
the
AFB.
updated Edelbrock, right?
Yeah, but it has annular boosters in the primary side. And so, man, it has, you would not believe how snappy the throttle response is with it.
Huh.
Yeah.
So
Back,
if I was going to go out and buy a new carburetor, probably for daily would be an ABS 2.
yeah.
Huh.
For something that I didn't want to work on every day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, the good thing about Edelbrock and Holly Carbs is you can pretty much pull into the parking lot of any O'Reilly's and get parts.
Yeah.
And that's what's good about them. Quadrajet used to be that way, but not so much anymore. You're pretty
Right.
much having to order anything. And then I saw your carb comparison video on that the sleeper with the Quadrajet versus the AVS, or not the AVS, the
The
new the new
VRS.
Edelbrock. Yeah, the new VRS. So, and it made 25 more horse than the Edelbrock or than the Quadrajet,
Yeah.
which I wasn't surprised there. I mean, one,
But
it's
in the Quadrajet's defense, I think we could have got probably 8 to 10 of that back by
with the
having
correct
metering
rods.
rods.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So,
yep, yeah, I can believe that. And it may have been more than that if it was running really fat.
yeah, it wasn't running in like 12.2, 12.4. I mean, that's not terribly fat, but
Yeah, see, Levi's saying the same thing. Dylan Levi's saying, dead pedal, I say Holly. Every O'Reilly says parts for the common 4150 Holly. Yep.
yeah,
But see, the Edelbrock is going to outgas mileage that Holly any day of the week. It'll never outperform the Holly. The Holly will
no,
outperform it, but it'll outgas mileage that Holly. The Hollies are, they don't have metering rods in the jets, and that's where that fuel economy is coming from. That and it's
yeah,
a vacuum secondary carburetor. If you're using a Holly with a vacuum secondary, it'll get a little bit better mileage at a double pumper, but not a lot. It doesn't have metering rods in there, right? And it's all directly based on the power valve. Is what's supposed to be doing it. So, so Clayton's Toolbox is saying, Andy, what do you consider the ideal air fuel ratio at full throttle racing? 13-1,
nope. Whatever the engine says it won't.
and it's probably close
Because,
to 12.7.
well, the thing about it is you'll find some engines will make peak power at 12.7. Some engines will make peak power at 13-1. You know what I'm saying? You have to
Mhm.
find what that particular combination likes and go with it. Whatever mile per hour is the best at the track, that's what you need to do.
Right. Well, that's what they used to say is like, you go out and throw two jet sizes up in it and see what happens a mile an hour. Right. If it
Yeah,
keeps picking up, throw two more jet sizes up in it, see what happens.
yeah.
So,
A lot of times, if you got an engine that's really um, has a good bit of compression in it, it'll like a leaner ratio.
oh,
Uh,
really?
hmm
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I do know that, well, when you get them lean like that, you can actually, if you get them really lean, um, just don't be too aggressive on the timing because you find yourself taking some timing out
well,
because they get
and
real detonation prone when they get lean.
you can go look at my dyno videos when I did mixed up boss. I mean, you've got a window there where basically you can change the air fuel ratio by point 2 or 3, and it's not really going to change that much power. It's going to overlay the same power. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
there's a window there, and as long as you're in that window where the engine's happy, roll with it.
Let's see.
Levi brings up a good point down there. It depends on the fuel that you're running too.
Yeah, the higher octane stuff, the slower it burns, right?
Well, if you have like oxygenated fuel, it
Oh,
will actually the its storage um, is a lot richer than 14.7. You know what I'm saying? You have
right.
to know that stuff going into it.
Yeah, and I do know that there is a difference between oxygenated and non-oxygenated.
Like
When
if
I
you run
dyno,
a Q16, VPQ16, you'll have to put like 6 jet sizes in it to get it to run compared to regular race gas.
well, I when I first put my T-Bird together, and then I moved out to California. Once I got it running, I was living in Florida, and I had it tuned there, and it ran great. I ended up tearing the rear end out of it, and then I got orders to go to San Diego. So I hauled it out to San Diego, and I had to rebuild the rear end, and then I took it up to West Tech, where Holdner and everybody goes, right? And I was going to dyno it, put it, what, because I was racing up. It was like DA is like 3,400 feet or something, right? Instead of sea
Right.
level. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to get this thing dyno and get it set up for out here in Southern California where the drag strips are up in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And I took some regular 100 octane VP out of the pump because they had VP 100 on the pump, the orange stuff.
Yeah.
And then I bought some MS 109, which was an oxygenated fuel. And then I wanted to compare what the two it did. And it was a 25 horsepower difference.
Big difference in fuel.
Yeah. Yep. Just between those two fuels. That was it. 25 horsepower
Yeah.
difference. Now, it did consume a lot more fuel with that
Right.
oxygenated fuel. Let's see here. Just like, again, Dylan saying that here, fuel will also dictate AFR if you run C12 or methanol, each having different AFRs. Typically, Andy's right. The engine will tell you what it wants. Well, and that's easy to do. Okay, the easiest thing to do is put a new fresh set of plugs in, start the car up, do your burnout, make one pass, and then shut it off, pull a plug, right? Generally, like the easiest one to reach. So it's generally like number one, or essentially, what is it on a Ford? Still number one too. So,
Yeah.
and then throw another plug in it, drive it back to the pits, and then you read that plug. And so on the strap on the back, the burn for the timing is on that strap, and you want it right in the middle of that curve, right?
Yep.
But the fuel, you'll have to either cut the threaded part off, or they got magnifying glasses that actually angle it so you can see down in there, but you're wanting to see the color of it, and you want to see like a light tan, perfect marshmallow burn, right? That's kind of where you got it ideal. Now, for methanol, I don't know what color that is. Is it
It's
still
gonna
light
look
tan?
like you just pulled it out of the box.
Oh,
Methanol burns so freaking clean. Same way with E85.
really?
Yeah, man. You'll pull the plugs out like, man, did I even run these things? Put them back in. You really, it's hard to see color on them. It really is.
Huh. I've never ever read plugs for methanol at all. So
In
I guess I'm gonna
fact,
get some.
the only time I've ever hurt an engine on nitrous was running it and spraying it with E85 instead of race gas
Why is that?
because you can't read the plugs. I mean, you pull it out and it's like, I don't know if it's rich or lean.
Oh,
And
and
next,
it's more forgiving too. The
but you go,
alcohol fuels.
yeah, but I went and made a pass, torched the ringland, second pass out. I'm like, oh, well, enough of that.
Guess she was lean.
Yeah, I guess she was lean.
I'll add some more fuel next time. Let's see. Yeah, Levi's saying, love me some Q16, but man, it's expensive. Yeah, all the oxygenated fuels are stupid expensive now. Even regular race gas is $9-10 a gallon,
Hmm.
for VP 110. And that's what I started looking at doing is like, I need to build something that runs on VP 110 just to keep the cost down. And I might end up just doing methanol or bring the compression down and run it on regular pump gas.
That's
Uh,
what I did.
oh, really?
I mean, mixed up balls, I run it on 93 octane.
Do you?
No need to run it on anything else.
See, unfortunately, the engine of my T-Bird is just a little bit too much. It's a 10 3/4 to 1. And with aluminum head, you'd think it'd be okay,
How
but
much
it's
cylinder
not.
pressure does it make when you
I have
cranking compression?
no idea.
Mm.
No clue. I know it's got a lot of camshaft in it. And I know that when we ran it on the dyno, when it was finally put together, I don't even remember what the duration of off the top of my head is, but we ran on the dyno 93. It was pinging pretty good, and so it was like, oh dang it. So we just started going up octane 95, 97 until it started no longer pinging,
Yeah.
But uh, let's see. Levi's saying he's going to have two cars. He's going to have two cars to learn about methanol with. So I'm either going to learn about it or see a lot of carnage. It's a lot more forgiving. Uh,
Yeah.
I had a buddy that's when I lived in Australia. I met a guy down there that he was running a front engine dragster, and he was running a small block Chevrolet with a 871 blower on it, and it was methanol injected, and it was just like a nostalgia drag racing setup. And I learned to play with it there. Is where I learned about actually, old school fuel injection, mechanical injection with the barrel valves and all that stuff. And what I found is that you get the tune way off, they're pretty forgiving. It's either just farts and pops and doesn't run well, or when it's pig rich, it still runs pretty dang good.
Yeah.
It just blows the excess out. So it was very forgiving. Let's see. And then again, Levi's saying he got C12 for $12 a gallon this year. Will likely be on a higher octane. I don't know if your car needs any more higher octane. It just needed, I think, didn't it start knocking at the end of the year? And didn't you say it was a rod bearing, right? Or main bearing? I thought it was a bearing, one of the two. But I don't know if it needs any higher octane, does it? Or you could try out your E85, because that seems to be the magic with the turbo, is the E85.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, it's Wednesday night, tech talk. So if you don't throw any tech questions up, you don't get them answered.
We're just going to be randomly talking now, aren't we?
Yeah, pretty much. Which is not really much of an issue. I'm pretty, I just like jabbering away like a monkey in a tree.
Yeah, he was hanging out at Cope's today for some reason.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's back at home already, chatting in. He was up at Cope's, and I saw a spy video of him, or a spy picture of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's up there checking out a Casper-Matic for his Laguna.
Yeah.
Yeah, John saying he was shopping for a 727 today, and I don't know, maybe he was getting some advice from the Cope father there.
The Cope father. That's what we need to start calling him. Cope father.
Yeah.
Or Father Cope.
Father Cope. I'm going to bless this transmission as it's going out the door. Let's see. I was saying the tune was lean, but it was on its deathbed anyway. I saw you racing it all season, and that thing was hiking the tire pretty good. Let's see. Wilburn's giving him a bunch of crap. Levi wanted to see a real transmission, but there weren't any 904s out. What's the irony? You go to a transmission shop to see a real transmission, and they don't have any of the mass-produced 904s. I guess they hadn't broken yet, yeah?
Maybe not.
All right, so Levi's saying Cope made him want a Gen 3 Hemi with a turbo.
That would be wicked. I'm getting into golf stuff.
So Clint's asking, here's a question. Airbags or hydraulics? Man, that's okay. There's, I guess, two major things you're wanting to go for here. All right. So hydraulics would be essentially the look. And I think airbags gives you 90% that look, but yet a reasonable ride. Hydraulics sacrifices the ride, period. It's like driving an I-beam.
Yeah, on a bed of rocks.
Yeah, on a bed of rocks over railroad tracks. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox says, is there a point of diminishing returns with stroking an engine? It seems many stroker kits take you into an under square cylinder. My engine is currently 4156 bore and 3975 stroke with a 7-inch rod. Man.
Well, I can tell you about 4.6s in strokers. It's a waste of time. You already have an engine that's square, 3.5-inch bore with a 3.5-inch stroke. They make a 3.75-inch stroke crank to make it 302 cubic inches. I built 3 of them for customers, right? and on average, they would only make about 20 horsepower more than the regular 4.6. And so, but if you build a big bore 4.6 that's got the 3.75-inch bore with a 3.5-inch stroke, it will make a ton more power.
And that is saying that it's okay. The bore is shrouding the valves,
Bingo.
right? And so
So,
no matter what you throw at it, it's not going to gain much until you open up that bore and it can feed more.
and my thing is like going back, you remember the early days of Mountain Motor, you
Oh
know,
yeah, pro stock. Yeah.
those engines, 800 cubic inches, really wasn't a whole lot faster than the 500 cubic inch NHRA Pro stocks. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. They were the downside of it, because I remember the big one was well, you're right. The 800 cubic inch was the Ford, right?
Mhm.
And everybody cried uncle because the Ford was so easy. The big block Ford was so easy to put big cubes in because it literally just took a crank,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody else, like your Chevrolets, they didn't have the big bore like that 460 did. So they were crying uncle. A lot of them were like 720 cubes, but there really wasn't a big gain between them over the 500 cubic inch Pro stock. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's because the cylinder head technology hadn't caught up with it or the bore spacing, because Mountain Motor Pro stock, there was no limitations on none of it.
None of it.
But I think no one made blocks that were like, a 5-inch bore space block.
Yeah.
They were all using factory blocks, and probably the best King Dingling out of that whole deal would have been the big block Ford, because
Yeah.
it's just a humongous Cleveland, is what it is.
Bingo.
Um, yeah.
So to answer that question, I would say yes, there is a point of diminishing returns. I don't know what that is. I don't, based off your combination, but
Mine is okay. Stroker is a little bit misleading for a lot of people. Okay. To
hmm
make a stroker engine, uh, I guess the best thing to explain here first is the center main bearing size. Okay. So you get the center main, 2.5-inch, 3-inch main, something like that. If you're using a Chevrolet, it looks like this might be like a 400 cubic inch block, like a 400 Chevrolet block. And I think they were a bigger main, weren't they? Like a 275 main.
yeah.
Okay. And so what happens is generally from the factory, you got to have enough overlap on the main bearing for the crank to work. Okay. Or they get real flexible and flimsy. Because what happens is in your main bearing, you want to have overlap where your rod, like say, your rod journals overlapping the main. So there's some strength through the crank. When you change the stroke on it, you move that out
hmm
further. Right now, there's no overlap, and the strength is all dependent upon the throws of the crank. So generally, what they'll do is it won't be a cast crank. When you buy a stroker, you can't buy a stroker cast crank. You got to buy a steel crank or a billet crank, and the reason for that is because the strength in the crank is already gone. Because this is a stroker for a 350 Chevy. Okay, 350 Chevy is what, 2.5-inch main.
hmm
You can only get so much stroke in there before it's got no overlap on the crank. Okay. And about a 383 is about the most you can really get out of
Yeah.
it. Okay. If the further you move it out, the weaker that crank gets. So the more robust material you got to make it out of. And then the cost just starts to go way up. Right.
Real
Now,
quick.
yeah. And in my opinion, the stroker, people have just run away with them. Right. I mean, like, they've stroked stuff where it's got no overlap on the crank, and they're running super duper expensive billet stuff. And but diminishing returns, I would have to say it's when you get outside of the regular easy stroker assembly where you got overlap in the crank.
Yeah.
That's when the cost starts going out the window. To go from a 350 to a 383, you're talking a $300 crankshaft, and the overlap is actually probably fairly decent. Um, when you start going up to, like, let's say a 4-inch stroke crank, okay, and that thing moves further out, and now you got to be a billet crank. You might only, like Andy was saying, you might only gain, 25 horsepower, and then you spent twice as much as what it cost you on that 383
Yeah.
crank, or
The
3 times
juice
as
isn't
much.
worth the squeeze anymore.
Right. And that's where, the downside of the stroker is. The other one is, like he was saying, it's limited by the bore. And Ford probably did it right when they did that 3.5-inch bore by the 3.5-inch stroke. It's probably that 4.6 would probably do better with a little bit less stroke.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Well,
de-stroke that thing, I don't know if anybody has, have they?
well, I know that. Well, take the Coyote engine. I mean, they enlarged the bore and the stroke, but they kept pretty much the same proportion as the
Mm-hmm.
4.6. So it's like 3.6 something. I don't know the exact bore size of a Coyote because I've only done one, but it's a lot. They kept that same square design, and those
Right.
things run crazy.
Well, when you start talking under square and over square,
Yeah.
okay. I can't. I always get these backwards. Is over square the one where the stroke is bigger than the bore?
Do what
Is
now?
square is the over square the one where the
The stroke,
the
the
stroke?
bore is over square means that the bore is bigger than the stroke.
Okay, so that's like your 302 Ford or a 350
Hmm.
Chevrolet over
Yeah.
square. Okay, and this is like all the junk I run is under square, which is a
Yeah.
Buick 350. It's got 3.8-inch bore and a 3.85-inch stroke. It's technically like a stroker from the factory.
Right.
And you can add more stroke. Guys don't really gain much horsepower at all. Um, when they enlarge the bore, when the bore even like 30 overboard makes a huge difference on them. And so when you go to like a 60 overboard, and that's just saying the head, the valve cannot flow enough with that small restrictive bore. Now you got a 4.156 bore
Oh
with a
yeah.
3.975 stroke. I think you could probably go up to a 4.1/8-inch stroke, and it probably is not going to impact it much.
Nope.
Like if it won't hurt it is what I'm getting at. You're probably going to gain. I don't know what's that make. It's already a 3.975 stroke, and so if it went to 4.1/8, that'd make it almost 440 cubic inch small block.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be okay. The only difference is that 7-inch long rod. Man,
What engine is that?
that's got to be a Chevrolet combination.
Gotta be. I don't know.
I don't know,
7-inch
4.156
rod
Barris with
though. That's
3.975 stroke. I don't know. Maybe that's a big block Chevrolet. That could be a big block Chevrolet.
Tunnel Ram Mafia. I see that comment.
Well, I'm trying to catch up now. I've been chatting about this one and hung up on it for a long time. So let's see here if we can catch another one from Clayton's toolbox here. Oh, okay. Never mind. He said it's the 425 volts, 30 over.
On that engine, I'd be more worried about head flow than I would be stroke.
Oh man, have you ever seen the ports on an Oldsmobile head? They
Yeah.
look like a Cleveland 4-barrel. They're
Yeah.
humongous.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, so I blew through a lot of questions here or comments. Let me see if I can catch up.
I
So,
seen the Coat Father in here, or
is the
Father
Cope
Coat.
Father in here?
Yeah, he was poking fun at John about 904s.
Levi is saying, in today's era, what's the cheapest engine and trans combo to go racing consistently without major issues or high maintenance? Used to be the small block Chevy, but there's so many options. No, there's
Yeah.
not. It's probably still a small block Chevy.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Um, Today, it is so easy to make horsepower. You know, now the problem is keeping it together. You know, you can go to any junkyard, get you a Gen 3 Hemi, get you an LS, get a Coyote, put boost to it, and man, that thing's going to make killer power. You know what I'm saying? Now it's just about keeping it alive.
I Man, I think for cheap combo they throw together, there's probably nothing that beats a small block Chevy. Cheap, reliable. It's small block Chevy and turbo 400. If you want cheap and reliable, I mean,
It would
it'd
be
be.
interesting to price out the difference now, the difference between a small block Chevy and say a 5.3 LS to make the same amount of power to see which one comes out on top.
I don't know. That 5.3 LS would probably be pretty cheap too. Like if you're going to go cheap with no major maintenance issues, I'm telling you, like you can't beat any of the like the basic push rod stuff. The only downside of the LS, in my opinion, is that it doesn't have a distributor that's easily attainable for the regular guy,
Right.
right? You got to buy the MSD box, and then it's 100% relying upon that MSD box working, or your what cam and crank sensors working.
You get that
Um,
distributor drive from Shane where you put a Ford distributor in there.
yeah, that's I think they were selling those up at Alky Digger.
Yeah.
Um, so you could put a distributor, and that would probably be the cheapest way to go is 5.3 LS with that distributor drive, even though it's going to cost you probably $600 for that distributor drive.
Yeah, but you're
It
saving money by not having to buy cylinder heads.
or
You
the
know.
box,
Yeah.
the ignition box, and then you just run a carburetor on it, and that may be the cheapest way to go. I don't know,
That's an interesting question, you know?
right? I mean, because I've always liked small block Ford. 32
Mhm.
Ford was the easiest way to make good power for cheap. You could literally go to the junkyard, find an Explorer, take the motor out, right?
Yes.
Bring it home, take the EFI off, throw the factory cam in the trash, and then put like an E cam in it with those GT40P heads or even a B cam, and it would run hard for what it
Yeah.
was for cheap, right?
I,
Now,
I'm
the
wanting to
train,
build I'm wanting to build me and I'm going to do it probably next year, but David and I was talking about just doing like what you said, an Explorer, long block,
mhm,
you know, build like a little dyno mule with a GT40Ps and
mhm.
start experimenting with stuff. See what I can
The
do.
small block Ford was the cheapest way to go for a long time, but now they're just getting hard to find,
Hmm.
and because they haven't made them since 2001, so now they're already 22 years old with the last vehicle they put them in.
Yep.
And takeout motors, they used to be falling from trees. I used to just buy one, spray it till the rods fell out, go get another one. And
Hmm.
then big expense on my car was the rear end, the drive shaft, and nitrous, and just hammer it because it never broke the cam. Right, that was
Right.
the one of the things. It'd blow up the bottom end, break the block. But the problem with the Fords was the transmission. Uh, C4 is not cheap. And
Not
then,
cheap.
yeah, once you get to the 600 horsepower level, you start dealing with the things like I was dealing with at No Name Nationals, where the transmission starts to flare up in high gear, and that's a hard problem to solve. Yeah,
Yep.
my AOD didn't do that, but the AOD would also make 10 passes and just be junk. So, and it'd be
Likely.
expensive junk.
Product
Huh?
plug right here. I've got the cure for that, and it's called the Casper-Matic.
Yeah, there he is, the Coke font. Yeah, but I guess overall combinations, I don't know what's the cheapest out there anymore. I bet it would probably be something like a Gen 3 Hemi and like a later model Gen 3 Hemi and a
Mhm.
904.
That would be pretty cool.
That'd be a cheap combination. I would think bang for the buck wise.
Yeah, just go get something out of a Ram, a 5.7 Hemi, or you know what I'm saying? If you could find a
Mhm.
6.4, which those things are hard to find, but you're right.
Well, okay, so I found a guy that has 427 big block Chevrolet forged cranks, but they were on a pulling tractor and were all lightened. 427s are internally balanced. But is there a way for a shop to tell what they are at? Yeah,
Yep.
they calculate the bob weight out of it, and then they rotate it and measure where it's at, and you'll be able to see there'll be Mallory slugs in it if it's been changed. But
Exactly.
most likely, if the cranks have been lightened, they're probably still internally balanced. Internally balanced, the other option for that, or another name for that, is zero or neutral balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? That means there is no weights on the harmonic dampener. There's no weights on the flex plate. It's all done internally. It's neutrally balanced. And generally, once you get to neutral balance, you don't change it back to anything else. So, yeah, that's what you're talking about right there. Let's see. All right. John says my 904 has a reverse manual valve body with CRT brake. Leave the forward manual. Rainbow shifters for the Turbo 350s.
There you have it.
Let's see. Michael Schmidt says he's home now, safe, pizza and iced tea in hand, watching Tech Wednesday night. What life. Thanks, guys. No problem. I'm glad we could provide you some entertainment on the side of the road.
Yeah, I'm glad you got home.
Let's see here. Okay. He says it's a one-wheel peel. Will a wider tire help reduce one-wheel peel? Does a one-wheel peel break anything or wear anything out? No. Tires. Wears tires out.
Yeah.
It's matter of fact, way back in the day, the 60s, dragster drivers used to have an open rear end
Yeah.
because it helped them from getting squirrely. And if you got the hook on one tire, it was fine.
Yeah. They
But
said if you run in a slingshot, you better have an open diff in it.
yeah. Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance, to do an LS consistently for, let's say, 500 horsepower to the tire, you're looking at $3K unless you mess with awful stock computer stuff. Um, I would say, really, if you're looking at cheap, okay, one, if you want to know how to do bracket racing cheap, or you're looking at ET cheap, because bracket racing cheap is a little bit different than ET cheap. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest cubic inch that you can possibly get is the bracket racing way to do it, because it's less affected by air changes, by atmospheric changes. That's what's going to throw the car off from your bracket number, right? The bigger the cubic inch, the more consistent it is. But overall, if you were to take everything into account, what would be the cheapest? I'm telling you, the cheapest is probably a 383 Chevy with a turbo 400 transmission, and it won't be the fastest thing at the track, but it sure as heck will be the most consistent and probably the most repeatable. But I mean, you could build 425 cubic inch small block Chevrolets. Let's see. What do we got that's new here? Okay, Sean O'Brien says, I just corner scaled my Classic Z with driver weight in the car. I've got 100 pounds on the left, or on the front left corner. Battery is already on the passenger side and really nothing to take out of the car. Well, okay. That
What's the overall weight? Can you move? You might be able to add some ballast if it's not too heavy and you
Well,
don't
that's what I
put.
was gonna say, because and generally where you put the ballast is the opposite corner,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it'd be the passenger side rear corner. And you probably only need like 25 pounds of ballast to take that 100 pounds out, because it works like a fulcrum,
Yeah.
um, and especially under acceleration, it works like a fulcrum. But I don't. What are you trying to do with the car? I guess is a good question, Sean. Because if you're just trying to get it all balanced per, every corner being the same, with the driver in there, that's probably not too bad. Only 100 pounds on the left front difference. Let's see here. Big Block 402. Stephen Myrick says, I'm about to test the limits of the stock 12-bolt axles. You're
Yes,
not going to
you
hurt them.
are.
You're not going to hurt them.
You going to test them?
Oh, was
That's
he
all.
spraying it?
It's a 30 spline axle, right? And a 12 bolt.
They're 28, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But they're still, I mean, man, I've seen stock 12 bolts running 9s, 8s in heavy cars, Chevelle and stuff.
Yeah.
They're pretty dang strong. It's just like an 8.8 Ford.
Yeah. Actually, the ring gear is almost the same exact size.
Yeah. It's 8.875 for a 12 bolt and 8.8 for 8.8 Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always told it was a copy of a 12 bolt. But,
Makes sense.
yeah. Okay. Do I have to bite the bullet and add ballast? No. You can take 100 pounds off that front corner. You might have to get creative.
Yeah.
Or there is another way to do it with fuel. If you have a like a fuel cell in that thing, you can move that fuel cell over.
Do you have adjustable coilovers?
No, yeah, that's another way to do it. Take some ride out of that one corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you get it to that fulcrum point to where it tips weight, I'm telling you, it was we did the Lemons car, which I have to get back to this summer, I guess. I gotta get back on that. But it was 250 pounds on one corner up front. But we put 50 pounds of battery back there and it changed the whole thing. It took 250 pounds out of that front corner by moving the battery back there. And it's only like a 40 pound, 50 pound
Yeah.
battery. So it changes the entire dynamic.
He seen it. It was about 50-50 right now, didn't he? Didn't he say that?
I didn't see that.
2,600 pounds, 50-50.
I might not be down far enough.
Yeah, 855.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Man, you're getting close. I'm telling you, if you can pull some weight out of that corner, like you got the horn up there or something that you can just ditch, start pulling little things out of it, and every other screw and the wheel well and crap like that. But the easiest thing to do is just add a little bit of ballast, and the 25 pounds saves you so much. I'm telling you, Amy's right. It won't be much weight that you have to add to pull that 100 pounds out, because you got to think of the car is working like a fulcrum, right? So when you change in that adjustable coilovers, if you go take a quarter turn out of one side, this, you ever heard NASCAR like go put a turn in it here or a wedge there? That's what they're doing. They're just, all it does is when they lower that one corner of the car, let's say a quarter of an inch, it changes the way the weight shifted on the chassis. And that little quarter turn might pull 150 pounds right off the front of that thing.
Yeah.
So let's see. And here's something that, I mean, it sounds stupid when you listen to it. Sean, lose some weight. I'm gonna tell you right now, 20 pounds out of the driver's seat. It's a huge difference. If you can go lose 10, 15, 20 pounds, it's gonna make a huge difference on the whole nature of the car.
Well, when Vizard told me that if every 9 pounds I lose is equal to 1 horsepower, that gave
Oh,
me
really?
a little different perspective.
So you need to get down to like 200 pounds, huh?
There you go.
And you got 1,100 horsepower truck now.
Using some of that decal math.
So Buick Smith's saying, so a shop could spin the crank and figure out the bob weights to figure out what weight rods and pistons my brother will need for the 427. That's great news. Thanks. Yep, that's correct. Let's see. That's correct. So Max Wedge Dick Dastardly is saying Chevrolet costs a third of what Mopar or Ford will cost. That's guaranteed. And then if you get into the oddities, like your Buick Olds Pontiac stuff, it's even more money.
Hmm.
So the closer you can get to a Chevrolet, I'm secretly working on a Chevrolet project that I'm going to unleash this summer. It's going to be cool and it'll be different. Um, it's small block Chevrolet material that nobody has touched on, which is a hard thing to do.
That is a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Sean's saying that's what the inliner in the car. I do have a V8 for it and would add 50 to 100 even to the front. I bet you it'd be more than that. It depends what V8 you're putting in there, but I'm going to tell you right now, Chevrolet small block is one of the heaviest engines you could put in anything, right? I mean, um, besides a big block, but a small block Chevrolet is one heavy, heavy bastard compared to anything else. 302 Ford is one of the lightest. So if you're looking at weight shifting, that's another consideration that you might want to look at.
Now you just got my wheels turning about taking a little Z car,
Mhm,
building a little 300 for it, or aluminum block Buick.
mhm.
That would be a fun little car.
Well, I'll tell you something I do know. The 350 Buick, which is all cast iron, is 150 pounds less than a small block Chevrolet. And the aluminum headed 300 with the aluminum intake is 200 pounds less than a small block Chevrolet off the front.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. Then if you do the 215 Buick, complete dressed and running is 350 pounds.
Hmm.
Right? So and then you could put a 300 crank in that 215. It comes out to 274 cubes, and it just so happens to have the same bore as a uh, Ford 46, and it has the same stroke. Well, it has the same stroke as a Buick V6, the 3.4-inch stroke.
Hmm.
So you might be able to use some of your knowledge in the 4.6 module world to make something
Yeah,
neat with the 215.
that would be pretty slick.
Yeah, and then it would still weigh only 350 pounds. Let's see. Dylan Levi saying that if I lost weight to be in the correct weight category, my car would be almost a tenth faster. Let's see. And he says about I love steak. So steak doesn't make you fat, bud. That's bread. Bread makes you fat.
Yep. I'm a bread
Yeah.
lover.
Are you? I'm diabetic. I can't be a bread lover.
Well, I've been doing this keto thing that my brother does.
Oh yeah.
And right now, man, I'm stuck. I've lost 17 pounds, but man, it's like I'm stuck and I keep doing the thing of trust the process.
Yeah, you gotta okay, so it goes in ebbs and flows. I had to do it when I first became diabetic. They put me on a diet that was like literally 1 degree away from a keto diet,
Hmm.
right? And I started doing it and sticking to it hardcore. Like I was having broccoli cheese soup. That's like one of the big keto things, right? But if you do chicken and broccoli, just keep doing that. And what'll happen is the keto diet starts once you get into that first 3 weeks.
Get into that ketosis, whatever they
Yeah,
call it.
which they call like you get into ketosis and then you get the keto flu,
Yeah.
right? You'll have no energy. You'll be drained, and your body will just start taking all whatever it's got laying around, fat, whatever, and just burning it for fuel. And it's literally like it just starts falling off 7 pounds a week, 8 pounds a week,
Yeah.
you know. But let's see. Clint Street Machine is saying his small block Chevrolet Bear Block is a heavy pig. It is. Let's see. Okay, Max Wedge Dick Dashley is saying his car weighs 2,900 pounds and some 3,100 with him in it in 2001. Now it's probably 3,200 pounds.
I wish Casper was 3,100 pounds or 3,200 pounds.
Man, I'm telling you, that's the best thing I ever did was first things first to put the car on a diet. I'm not taking
Yeah,
anything down the track that I don't need.
there you
Right?
go.
It's gone. I took all the bumper supports and structural supports and everything, the crash bars out the doors. I mean, I took so much weight out. Now you're still driving yours on the street, so there's no purpose in going that crazy. But
I have
I'm
it
sure
loaded
there's
down with trash on the back of it right now. I
you
should
got
take
trash
it
in
to,
it.
yeah, I've got it loaded down with trash to head to the dump tomorrow.
Well, Val 360 Jimmy says, at what lift is the most important when looking at cylinder head flow numbers? I'm guessing max flow numbers will give you an indication of how much power the heads can support. Okay. The max flow numbers, pretty much you just take that and double it is pretty much the potential of that cylinder head. Now you can get more out of it by decreasing the parasitic loss by using some thinner rings or going up in compression, but generally that gives you a good idea of what max horsepower number that head's capable of. If it flows 300 CFM, it's going to make about 600 horse. Um, if you make it an 8-to-1 compression engine with that 300 CFM head, it probably won't make 600 horse,
No,
but it has the potential to. And what lift is the most important when looking at cylinder head flow numbers? Well, where's your camshaft at? That's the one you need to look at. Because I mean, it spends very little time opening the valve at the 100, 200 mark, right? You're looking at more like if your camshaft is 450 lift, you're going to want to look at right around 400 to 500 flow, right? That's going to be your major moneymaker right there.
yeah, and the thing about it is too, you got to remember it sees the low lift numbers twice, where it only sees the peak flow number once. When the valve is opening up and it reaches max lift, it only sees that one time.
Yeah.
Where you know,
It's coming down the
open,
backside of the cam.
yeah,
It's going to see it twice.
basically. And I'll tell you this: the faster you can get that column of air moving, the better off you are. You know, you want a lift curve or flow curve that's very robust in the low to mid ranges. And it all depends on how much um, velocity you're having through that same cylinder head as well, because flow numbers by themselves is very misleading. You have to have velocity in order to make the cylinder head work.
Well, and that's what makes the magic behind the LS work. Okay. You want to know the magic behind the LS? The magic behind the LS isn't, the architecture, the structure of the block, none of it. It's all in the cylinder head and it having that tall, narrow port. And that when it's tall and narrow like that, I'll give you a simple example. If it's fairly windy outside, go stand between your house and the garage and see how windy it is in there, right? Generally when you got two structures on the side, the air will be channeled through that center area. Okay, it'll be twice as windy in there. And that's because the velocity is so much higher because the air is being channeled through this tight, narrow space. And that's exactly what's happening with the LS cylinder head. They made the port tall and narrow, and that
Hmm.
increased the velocity through the port. Is all that really did. It still has the same port volume as if you shrunk it down and made it fatter and wider, but the velocity would be so much slower through that big, wide port. You make it tall and skinny, velocity super high.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it has good torque numbers. I mean, if you and think back to it, when the first time you saw an LS when they first came out and they had a 4.8, there wasn't a single 4 liter something engine out. Ford had the 4.6, and the torque numbers for the 4.8 were like double of what a 4.6 would do. And it was just ridiculous. Um,
Hmm.
I was surprised when I saw those. When those trucks came out new, they were like 300 something foot-pounds of torque out of a 4.8. And you're like, hold on a minute. What the heck is going on here? 340, 350 foot-pounds of torque. Like, no. But that's
Yep.
where they were at. Okay, John Wilburn saying, who all here wants to see a best of 3 match race at the No Name Nationals between Tall Garage and Levi's Backyard Performance? That would be awesome, but I don't
I
think
do.
I don't think Ken will have his stuff done.
Well, that should be motivation right there.
It should be. But Ken's got to get something running and show up at the No Name Nationals with it. He's been like he's always had something on the back burner. Matter of fact, I think the first year he even came out and didn't even bring a car, that's cool, But man, I wouldn't set up a match race until you got something running. Oh, here's why you guys do this to me. All right, let's see. And see, Danny Boyd saying the same thing, Andy. Keep going. Your weight will drop, but you'll look the same. And you will sometimes notice that you're thinner, but your weight didn't go down. Got to account for food and drink weight too.
Yep.
I don't even weigh yourself. Just get on that diet and do not deviate. Yep. And then if you get hungry, chomp on a couple almonds and it'll go away.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That's what I've been doing.
Okay. Yeah. The almonds were good. But I just try to stick to high protein stuff. Let's see. Clint, like I said, your truck is still a truck.
Thanks. It trips everybody out. Like when I take that thing to the dump, them old guys that's running the place, they're like mesmerized. They always want me to do a burnout when I leave, so I have to oblige them.
Let's see here. Okay. Michael Schmidt saying 30-degree valve seats allow more volume faster, but I understand its negative effects up top end. Yeah.
Yep.
All you're doing is trading. Yeah, you're trading top end for bottom end.
Yeah. What happens is if you take a 30-degree angle and you open it compared to say a 45, there's more window there at the same valve lift. But the higher valve lift, normally once you get around 450 lift, that's when you'll start seeing negative side effects of a 30-degree valve seat. It really starts becoming detrimental around 500 plus.
He asked a question a little bit further down. Continuing, do you know at what RPM levels the negative effect occurs?
Well, it's not necessarily RPM, it's camshaft. If the cylinder head is only flowing to 480 lift, this is where Pontiacs really shine because they have 30-degree valve seats. And I built a Windsor with GT40 heads that was running in a dirt track class, and you had to run we could only run a 460 lift cam, right?
Uh-huh.
So I cut the seats on a 30-degree angle, and it picked up like 15 CFM all through the curve down low. You know what I'm saying? So that cylinder head was flowing more with that limited camshaft that we could run. Man, we went out there that made a 12-to-1 with a GT40P on a 351 Windsor with a flat top piston. Now, you want to talk about something that went out there? I told him, I said, now look, I said, when you take this thing out on the track, do not get too far out ahead, or I said, they're going to be protesting us like crazy, What does he do? He gets out there in the heat race, man. He's lapping them, man, in the heat race. And I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, the motor, the only thing that was illegal in the engine was it was supposed to have 4 eyebrows in the piston, and it only had 2. So if someone would have protested us, which they did, we just loaded up and went home. We forfeited, but that thing was freaking nasty.
Yeah.
We're only 4 out there, and we're like a whole lap ahead of everybody, and everybody else is in their Chevrolets.
See, my buddy, that stock cars is where man, that's where all of the good, neat stuff comes from. Where you try all the different combinations, where you're limited to lift and and valve size and engine size.
Yeah.
I had a buddy. I was in stationed in Gitmo with him. Right, we were doing detaining operations for Al Qaeda prisoners, and this guy was from Louisiana, and he ran what they call a 305 stock car.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like it might have been a modified or a super late model, but it was 305 cubic inch limit,
Yeah.
and
That
everybody showing up with
that
their
used to be a big class.
everybody was showing up with their 305 Chevys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I said, man, dude, get a 307 Chevy, get a 307. Still fits the class rules. It's not bigger than 30 over. You fit right in, except for all that bore. Now put a set of Vortec heads on it, and you're gonna freaking run circles around them dudes, and they won't be able to figure out what's going on. I said it's got the same size, it's got same size main bearings. It's got the stroke on it shorter, and the bore is bigger. Right? I'm like,
Hello.
it's a better combo all around. And so he was showing up 307 Vortec heads, and I mean, just
Wearing
beating
them
on them.
out.
Yeah. And they're like, how are you getting this 305 to run like that? Well, because it's a 307, and it was the one everybody thought, they completely forgot about. That was the real dead dog in the mid 70s.
It was.
Yeah. But it's a 283 is all it is. Some freaking stroker 283.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Tall Garage says Vizard says there isn't much flow on the floor in regards to. So can you raise it and make the port smaller and raise the speed?
Yes, you can. And that's no different than what, and I'm going to use the Cleveland guys, the 4-valve Cleveland, the 4-barrel Cleveland heads. They
Hmm.
fill the bottom of the port. It raises the velocity. The flow goes up, makes for, you'll pick up 40 foot-pounds of torque just by doing that. So
And
you're exactly right.
yeah, the Cleveland guys used to fill half the port with epoxy,
Yeah,
and then it would run better.
they
And
would
it was
run
like,
better.
how is this possible? And it was all because velocity. I mean, yeah, it can move a ton of air, but like if you're moving a ton of air and it takes forever to get it to move, that's why the Cleveland 4 barrels, when they were new and they were on the street, people were driving them, they were a dog down low, dog.
Yeah.
But about 6,500, hang on, man, because it would come just freight training around you.
Pretty much if you feel, and I learned this working with them LS3 heads, if you take a 4-barrel Cleveland and you fill the bottom of the port, you're basically making an LS3 style port out of a Cleveland. You're raising the port, you're making the short turn radius longer. Yeah, that's what you're doing.
Let's see. Oh, hey, well, tell Dylan I said hi. Okay. What else we got here? Okay. Oh, never mind. I must have missed something here. Oh, okay. Here we go. Can 630 in the eighth is all you got to beat, man. Put up well, the rest. But
Yeah.
630 in the eighth mile is about 600 horsepower car,
Yeah.
right? Depending on what the weight is. Now, if you're up
Unless
around
you're me,
4,000 pounds, it might.
4,200 pounds.
Yeah. If you're up at 4,000 pounds, that's about 650, 700 horse car. Let's see.
I can't wait to see what Casper runs with a real transmission where I can leave on the brake and let it eat.
I think it's going to be interesting because you've had training problems with it pretty much since day one, right?
Day one. Day one. The second
Yeah.
pass is when it broke the converter, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah. And what did it run on the one good pass?
680, 688, something like that. 688
Hmm.
at 100 miles an hour, right at it. And that was with a mediocre 60-foot time. I mean, it's like a 157, 158, 60 foot, something like that.
Oh, that's pretty slow. Yeah,
So,
but there's a lot of weight getting to move. I mean, was it truck
but
weigh 4,200?
42, yeah, 4,280 pounds,
That's a lot. How much gear you got in it?
430.
Oh, all right. Um,
But see, now this is the other thing. I'm going from a 246 first gear ratio to a 272 first
oh,
gear
so it's
ratio.
got to leave harder.
It's going to leave harder with that Casper-matic.
Yeah, yeah, but
I
then
think
it's
I'm
got.
going to have to put some 5/8 studs in the rear axles.
You have to do what?
Put some 5/8 wheel studs into.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. With that much weight leaving off a trans brake, yeah.
I don't know. There's guys at the Buick Nationals that show up in electric 225s and run nines with big stage 2 motors and stuff, but they don't have big stuff like that. And those Electras, I mean, they're still lugs barged out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight, man. But if it was a 4 lug, yeah, I'd start sweating it. But nah, that 5 lug, I think that's quite a bit. Think
You
about it, it's
know,
probably got half-inch studs in it now, right? Screw
it's
in
got
studs.
1/2 inch studs, yeah. Got that
Man,
massive 5 on 5.5 inch bolt pattern.
yeah, that makes it even stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a bigger circumference, right?
Hmm.
So the closer you get to the center, the weaker it gets. Okay. Well, what else we got? Dizzy Izzy is saying, I've always wondered if machine grooves at an angle in the throat of an intake would help create a vortex that helps atomization.
It depends on if it's carbureted or if it's fuel injected. I mean, look at what I did with that 408. We put a turtle in the bottom of the intake. So, yeah, you can manipulate it. I don't know about creating a vortex, but you will
It's all
definitely
about
change.
airflow, and it's what that combination wants. And plenum volume, runner length, all that stuff is in play, right? Like, okay, um, to give you an example, 1985, Bob Glidden's running in Atlanta, right? Goes to the traps. I mean, he's just absolutely putting a beating on everybody. Couldn't figure out what he's doing. And then like the third round of eliminations, he goes up over, barrel rolls the car like 5, 6 times, gets out. The first thing he does is take his jacket off and throw it over the intake manifold. Because what he's done is he's bought, like, let's say, a Victor tunnel ram, and he's cut it and sliced it and diced it and welded it back together. And it's literally like 2 inches shorter, and the plenum volume is like double, and it's wider than what it would be. And he didn't want anybody seeing what was going on there. I mean, the hood was off the car, and he didn't want anybody to see what he was doing, because if you think about it, like, Bob Glidden is amazing. Like, as amazing as everybody else was, Bob Glidden was like the next level above. Okay. And
Hmm.
he wasn't big time money sponsored anything. He was doing this stuff on his own. Right. And it would suck for, like, let's say, the Wayne County Speed Shop guys to show up and just steal his secrets, because he's spending money out of his own pocket to do this, right? And that's why I like Bob Glidden. He was the regular guy just putting it on the world,
Yeah.
better
And,
figure it out.
when I've seen interviews with him, and he said a lot of his secret to success was the fact that his race team was his family. He didn't have hired help, so his family was able to keep his secrets in house, and so that kept him ahead of the competition a lot of times.
Um, so Michael Schmidt's saying cheap light front wheels. Dallas, you mentioned aluminum spare tires from Thunderbird and Mustangs were cheap and light. I saw a T-Bird spare wheel, and I think it had 4 lugs. Are there any 5 on 4.5? There is. Go find a Lincoln Mark 8
Mm-hmm.
They'll have aluminum spare wheel, and then sometimes the town cars have them. And the later stuff, I don't even believe that they're aluminum. They're and the Mustang GTs. The Mustang GTs have those 5 on 4.5 with and a Cobra with the aluminum wheel, but they'll be painted black. So pick them up first. You'll know immediately as soon as you pick it up. And the neat thing is,
Immediately.
yeah, the neat thing is they're 15 by 4 inch. And
Exactly. I ran
yeah,
them on the Mustang for a long time.
yeah. I tried a set of those on my T-Bird, and then I put some 8 by 26 by 8s on the rear. And I tell
Mm-hmm.
you what, never again, man. It left black marks down the track and brown marks in my underwear, man. It was
Escaped
freaking
the entire
scary.
track.
One scary ride. That's what it was.
Get
But
in and hang on.
yeah, it's once I got it up into high gear, it started sliding the back end around, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when it's making all that horsepower. Let's see. Buick Smith says, Andy, I forgot to ask you the other day. Did you guys weld in spurs in the bottom of the intake to help secure the putty for the turtle?
What we did was we actually drilled holes through the bottom of the plenum and squished the epoxy through it and anchored it that way
Hmm.
instead of welding it. But yeah, you can do it that way as well.
See, John said he heard Bob Glidden say he'd spend a whole week on one intake.
I can
I
believe
don't
that.
doubt that. Yeah, I don't doubt it at all. The Drag Boss Garage did a video one time where they actually showed. I want to say it was like an Edelbrock part number, like TR1 or TRX intake or whatever,
You
next
are
to
19.
UR19.
Yeah.
They had the
And
two
they
side by
welded it.
side, and it's like this one was shorter by 2 inches and wider, and the runners were shorter, but it looked like the UR19 as it was produced.
Yeah.
But side by side, it was completely different, and you
Night and
could
day
not
difference.
tell. Yeah. Let's see. What about the Billy Glidden Mustang convertible? Uh, I don't
Billy.
know. I don't think. See, I don't. Billy was pretty dominant the first couple of years of that Pro 50 class,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of just fell off.
Yep.
And I think a lot of it was, to be honest, I think it was the other racers were outthinking him. I hate
Could
to
have
say
been.
that, you know, but
Well, that and I think he started spending more time with the family. I think there was a bunch of different things. He got tired of being on the road, and so yeah,
yeah. Well, I tell you what, that does take a toll on you. Being
yeah,
gone all the time, that takes a big toll on you. Yeah, and John saying, and that's a Glidden week, 168 hours.
yeah,
I don't. I always used to hear like cool stories about the dude because he was from Whiteland, Indiana, right, which
right,
is like, I don't know, maybe 150 miles from where I was from. But there used to be like stories about the guy where people go over his house and he'd have 7 engines. He's building them, and he didn't have a single engine stand. And they're like, "Well, Bob, how are you building those?" He said, "I'm building them on a table, and that way they're not. It doesn't have the structure of the bolts going through the back, flexing the casting when you put something together. It's sitting on a table and it's level,
yeah,
right?" I thought that was super interesting. Didn't own a single engine stand.
nope,
So yeah, that's Fab Race Mod Repeat is saying Bob Glidden is proof that you can outwork the competition, and he did do
War-
that.
and Warren Johnson will even say that he's been interviewed saying that. He said it's just because he worked harder.
Yeah, he did. The dude was an animal. In the '80s, that's every freaking working man's hero. Like,
Yeah,
everybody loved Bob Glidden. Not that it is like I don't. You might not even like Fords, but you like Bob Glidden. The dude could just make it work, man. And he didn't say anything. He was a man that, like, if you went up and got his autograph at Indy, he probably wouldn't say 2 words to you. Right? He didn't talk much at all.
no,
But he also didn't shun you off when you wanted an autograph or whatever. He was like more than happy to do it, but he didn't want you like bothering him, right? And
There's one race that you can watch on here that I think is really interesting. You know, in '79 when he went to the Plymouth Arrow, right?
Mhm.
So at the Gator Nationals, it ends up being him running against Ronnie Sox because Sox and Martin came back in '79. And so when Glidden beat him, he went over and got Ronnie and let them interview him because he had that much respect for Ronnie Sox being the first king of pro stock.
right, the legend that he was, Mr.
Yeah.
Four Speed.
You know, I just thought that was so cool. You know what I'm saying? You could see a true camaraderie between them.
Yeah, that well, Glidden, I lost a lot of respect for him. I mean, I loved the guy. I thought he was great. He was fantastic. But I lost a lot of respect for him when Ingersoll showed up with that turbo Buick at the IHRA event and everyone started dogging on Ingersoll. And Ingersoll, I mean, he cut his teeth running 2.3 turbo Ford, right?
Hmm.
That's where he learned everything. And then he applied it to that Buick, and he was right, because when they asked him about it, like, these guys are wanting to throw you out of here because you got this turbocharged V6, and he's like, look, I'm the only guy in the whole class. You can go down and buy one of these cars at the dealer,
Hmm.
right? Like the turbo
That's true.
V6. Yeah. But you couldn't get a mountain motor Pro Stock Thunderbird at the
No.
dealership, but you could get yourself a Turbo Regal. So, yeah, John says Bob Glidden and I said hi to each other once in passing once. Never, or regret never having a conversation with him. He wouldn't have said much anyway to you, John, to tell you the truth. He just wasn't a big talker. If you look at him in the interviews, he literally, like, even the ones he did in his house, he answers the question and nothing more. It
Hmm.
was, I mean,
Very
he
matter
did,
of fact.
yeah, yep. He didn't talk a lot. Let's see here. Oh, Dick Dastardly, or Max Wedge Dick Dastardly says my dad would take his friends' used plugs, points, and wires and beat them street racing again.
That's funny.
Oh, Wendy English is home, so
Yep. You
let's see.
know,
Levi's backyard performance. Would be cool to see a small tire. No names. Get that awesome. I don't know how. I don't know where that's going to go. It sounds like we got some serious hammers showing up this year, but like John
serious
Wilburn
hammer.
says, when they show up, that's when you start worrying about them.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of guys say they're going to be there. Let's see. Uh, he says, John says, I'll play devil's advocate on the Ingersoll thing. Pat Musi told NMCA to keep the turbos out, and they didn't kill the class in a few years. I don't know what would have happened because if they would have said something like, it's got to be a factory production turbo combination, I think that would have changed the way that Pro Stock would have dealt with it. Because if it would have been me, I would have went right back home and built a 2.3 turbo Ford, and that thing would have been a contender.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you don't know, what is that guy's name? Hubner. I think he died a few years ago. Huber. He was big time turbo 4 guy in the Mustangs. And he had like I don't know, like an 86 SBO Mustang or something, 85. And that thing was killer fast back in the day. And
Well, here's the thing. I've got a cylinder head over at Vizards that we've been working on. 2.3 was actually 2.5, made 733 at the rear tires. The car has already been 570s, 568, 570. And now we're doing stuff to the cylinder head to get it up to 1,000 at the tire. So 4-cylinder 2.3 base motor can flat out run.
Well, it's essentially half of a 4.6, I believe.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Michael Schmidt says that Shirley Muldowney was recently interviewed and she was bummed that drag racing is now huge money. She was wondering how to get regular people back in the sport. She could be helped to AHRA. Dude, okay. She probably could be. I've had a lot of people offer to help. A lot of people. It never went anywhere. I'd ended up spending so much time spinning my wheels that I'd never get anything out of it. And it was just wasted time. It's what you really had to look at. The problem with drag racing, it really isn't so much the people in the sport. You have to give them a reason to want to come out and watch. That's where the money is made, right? If you don't give them a reason to come out and watch, there's no point in even putting on something. And that was what I always tried to do. If you ever look at the stuff that I did previously, was like we did best of 3 match races, where you'd pair guys up based on their ET, and it's like it's already going to be close, right? They're already paired up based on ET. They're within a tenth of each other, so it's going to be close. And then we did things like the Nostalgia Modified. I didn't do Nostalgia Modified because I just loved the class and they needed to come back. That was one worth watching because it all happened on the first 60 foot and they were just all over the place, all the way down the track. It was fun to watch. It was very entertaining. And I tried to keep the rules loose enough that the regular guy could join, but tight enough and stringent enough that it wasn't going to be big money coming in just buy their way to the, being the fastest car on the planet. I mean, it would happen over the course of 5 years or whatever. But then when the Nostalgia Modified guys split off and then went to, what was it, Nostalgia Drag Racing League, when they went to the NHRA, sucking up to the NHRA after I'd already made them a class, that made me pretty pissed off. You would literally go to the sanctioning body that axed your class. Come on. No, you guys are freaking, you lost your mind. And then they went to NDRL when they couldn't find a home with the NHRA. So, but yeah, there's a lot of people that have offered and no one's really helped. I mean, the first 2 years I talked to Larry Dixon, right? Larry Dixon had just had his license pulled, never could run Top Fuel again. And you can see where that went. How many he's on how many AHRA posters? 0. So it's the difference is wanting to help and having the ability to help. Yeah, I think it's the big one. And a lot of people just don't have the ability to help. Let's see. Big Block 402 says, I looked at a 68 Dart this afternoon that's ready to hit No Name Nationals. And is that Jaron Long's car? Some of them are supposed to be crazy fast. There's a lot of Dodges coming this year with a lot of heat. So let's see. Buick Smith says, Andy, did you do the same air cleaner lid flip on the Edelbrock behind the scenes? Same 25 horsepower change?
No, I focused most of my attention on the Quadrajet and that setup because that's what's going to be ran in the car. The Edelbrock test was just something, do it, see what it does, because we were running out of time. That's the thing about doing dyno testing. You run out of time really quick. So I had 10 minutes to throw the carburetor on there out of the box just to see what it did, and that was it.
Huh. Well, I can definitely testify that dyno time goes by stupid fast. It seems like, if you were to pick any, let's say you had a 7-hour period, and your dyno period is 7 hours. Your 7-hour period, you could watch 3 movies, and then it would just seem like it drug on, right?
Yeah.
The second you get in that freaking dyno cell, the clock is ticking and you're on the dime.
Man,
it's
and
like
that clock speeds up, it seems like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And the sad part was, it's like when they start the motor up and they go to warm it up, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, God, it's taking forever. I mean, it's like literally, it's probably the same amount of time as you would normally drive the vehicle and it would get hot.
10
But it
minutes.
just seems like it takes forever when you're like, man, it's taking so long to get this
Yeah,
engine warmed
what's
up,
going
right?
on
Like,
here?
but yeah, it's always found that it like you start it up and they're loading it and you're like, oh man, it's gonna be up to temp in like 5 minutes. No, it's like up to temp in like 20,
Yeah.
30 minutes. It just seems like forever. Let's see. Fan Race Mod Repeat says no one wants to watch a bracket race unless they know someone who is participating. This is the reason Dallas and I came up with the Quick Draw Street Series. Yeah, we tried a lot of stuff at Northeast, a lot of different things, um, because it is literally a bracket track. So you can't
Yeah.
just ixnay the brackets. But what I was trying to do is, Chris and I had talked about it for years, is you got to bring in something that's heads up with the brackets. So to bring the crowd, but then you also got the brackets, and because bracket racing is the reason why bracket racing sucks for the spectator. I'll tell you, this is where things are screwed up. Okay, drag racing is real simple idea. Okay, the stands are at the beginning because that's where the burnout happens. That's where the dry hops would happen. That's where the clutch dumps would happen. That's where the wheelies happen, right? You can see the light go down and all those things happen. But in a bracket race, where's the most exciting thing happen in a bracket race? At the big end, where you go
Mhm.
across the stripe within a thousandth of the other guy. No one's standing there. There's no stands there. There's no nothing there. Generally, they don't even let you out there to see side by side where the car is in. And that's why there's no excitement to it. And then what they did is they threw in the throttle stops, the delay boxes, all the electronics. The cars don't wheelie. The cars don't do anything crazy. They aren't fun to watch. There's nothing exciting and enthralling about them. And that's what killed it. I mean, as a spectator sport, when you give the spectator nothing to look at, it's boring.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And that's where I thought, I think probably the biggest thing since when I started doing the AHRA, the biggest thing that's had the most impact was that pit sign that I made up that says burnouts through the lights, wheel stands and dry hops are encouraged. Make the fans happy. That thing has circulated Facebook I don't know how many times. And the crappy part about it is there's tracks out there that made up the sign that looked exactly like it to put it their track. Uh, never called me once, you know?
It's crazy.
Let's see. I'm going to have the mouse motor in a field of bulls, but
Wow.
it's all fun. Dude, you got a turbo hanging off that sucker.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'd rather be lucky than good any day.
the only difference between my car and your car is uh, mine is repeatable. That's what big cubic inches and all throttle does for it. It's very consistent and repeatable.
Hmm.
Let's see. Big Block 402 saying yes, Jaron Long. They have won several races this year. They also have a Fox body that's on fire this year too. Oh, cool. They're supposed to be out at No Name Nationals. So
That's cool.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully they're there. Danny Boyd says he'd rather watch the big end. That's where it would be great to have. I don't know why. Well, I do know why there's no spectator seats out there because that's where the
Yeah.
cars come through at speed. And when
Yeah.
they go through over the wall, that's what they do is they come apart right there. Uh, but I, I have no I have no problems with bracket racing. It's three forms of sportsman racing: brackets, heads up, and index racing. You have to
Hmm.
have all three, I believe. If you're going to have a race, it shouldn't be a bracket race. It should be a mixture of all three of those as a sportsman race.
I I really like index racing because unless you're allowing throttle stops, but like if you're running, say, like an eighth mile and you're running a 7.0 index and say a 650 index, the cars are leaving at the same time. They're getting to the finish line about the same time. It's not
Hmm.
terrible to watch. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, and they're classed up. Right? That's what
Yeah,
that's what makes it worthwhile. Is that the cars are already within a certain number.
yeah.
The thing I always hated about was like, okay, a throttle stop is an electronic device that closes the throttle. But before the throttle stop was essentially like a restrictor plate, and you
Hmm.
put it underneath the carburetor, and you could dial it how much restriction it had,
Yeah,
and those things ruin it too. Um, you try to take the trans brake out or the delay box out, and guys will have the long throw buttons, and it's like there's no way to get around it, And the sad part is a delay box and a throttle stop work together, but they only make a good driver great, right? Or an average driver great because the box does all the work for you. But a great driver is still a great driver. It doesn't matter if it's foot brake or if it's, you know, on trans brake or,
you still have to drive the strike.
yeah. And that's what I like about it. I mean, I enjoy bracket racing a lot. That's where I cut my teeth at. And I'm dang good when it comes to you just got it has nothing to do with the car as long as it's fairly consistent. It has
Yeah,
everything to do with how you drive it, right?
exactly.
I mean, I had a switch. I could turn my alternator off. I knew that gave me a tenth. That gave me a tenth. I measured it many times before. It gave me a tenth. I'd dial it normal time, shut the alternator off. I'd hold a whole tenth. And then this
Yep.
guy's running a 4-speed next to me. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to run a tenth faster. He's going to think I'm going to run dead on the number, and he's going to get around me at the big end, and he's going to break out like
You
mad.
gonna let him go?
Yeah. And it's all about working the game and figuring it out. Some guys are better, some guys are not.
Yep.
And I I hated guys like Barkley. Okay, Barkley Schmidt is like literally, um, he is like a human delay box, right? I mean, he can drive the stripe, he can cut the light, he can cut ET down the track. He knows how to hold. He knows how to all. I mean, he's good at it.
Yeah.
Hated guys like that because I was never good at the whole package. I was good at what I was good at.
Right.
And I'd try to find the guys that weren't the whole package deal because they're freaking hard, man.
Yeah.
And the only way to really beat the full package guy is you go up there, you cut a 5.0 light, and you
Yeah.
run dead on the number, right? That's the only way to send them home.
And that's tough.
Yeah, that's tough. That's the
That's
hardest thing to
tough.
do. But I don't know. Maybe I should show up in the bracket race this year at No Name Nationals as well as the 28 10-5 engines. Show you guys my inner workings
There
because
you
I can
go.
go rounds. I'm not worried about that.
When you bracket race, would you rather be chased or chase somebody if you had
I'd
to
rather
race?
be the I'd rather be chased.
Yeah.
I'd rather be chased almost every time. I like being the slowest car in the fastest class.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that, like, my personal deal is like, if I have to wait, I can almost guarantee you my light is not going to be as good because I'm worried about red lighting because I'm having to sit there, and
Well,
it's
you
aggravating.
know, when I was when started bracket racing in the early 90s, right? And then I went in the Navy and then I got into it again about 2000, I guess. And things had changed at that point. But
Mm,
in the 2000s, they had these classes. You could do your like pro, your super pro, your street
yeah.
class, and then there was the King of the Mountain class. And that's the class I always went in. It was the biggest payout, and I don't see anybody doing that anymore.
What
And
was
it's
that class about?
that's bracket racing across the board. So it don't
Okay.
matter if the dude shows up on a moped or top fuel dragster, you're bracket racing them.
Okay.
And I had to wait one night. I was running 6 I think 670s or something in the 8th mile.
Hmm.
And this dude had a 4-cylinder Chevrolet Beretta,
Oh my
right,
God.
with an automatic, and they were just on fire. It was running like 2110, which it damn near timed out the system, right? I sat there up on the converter for like 18 seconds, right? And I finally let it go. And I mean, this was like the quarterfinals, and I beat him at the stripe. I mean, I came around him, and it was like that car was parked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I flew around that guy, and everybody cheered. Everybody, because they were wanting to see that Beretta go down. It was just like so painful to watch.
We have a guy here that's local to Shadyside. He has like a early mid 90s F-150 with like a 300 in it, and it's got like a panel bed on it. I mean, it's crazy. It runs like 13 seconds. But
Uh-huh.
man, he is the most deadliest guy out there.
Oh, in the early 2000s, when I started bracket racing again, we went to Gulfport Dragway in Gulfport, Mississippi. And there was a guy there. He bracket raced every weekend. His name was Manuel Babbitt, and he ran like a 1973 F-150 with a 390 and a 4-speed with a granny low, right? And I
Mhm.
mean, this dude, he'd go up to the line and just wind the sucker up 7 grand, just dump the clutch, and the truck would come out all twisted up because it's got like 5-to-1 first gear and 390
Yeah.
gears, right? And then just grab second while the thing's hanging the tires. And it was so cool to watch. He'd go home second round every week. It didn't matter, but it was the most fun to watch, man, because it was like
Mhm.
this combination is not something that you normally see, and it actually ran pretty good. I mean, they were bracket racing quarter mile. I love bracket racing quarter mile because if you become good at bracket racing in the 8th mile, it's like shooting fish in a barrel in the quarter mile.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Uh,
So Danny
let's
Boyd's asking, is that 4.9 stock? Yeah, it's 100% stock, and it's like 13s in the 8th mile, something like that. Did a 1, 2, 3 burnout.
let's see. I'm trying to find where I need to catch up here. Okay, so Blue Grit Garage. I met quite a few of you at the last 2 No Name Nationals, along with my daughter and brother as spectators. Hope to get a car finish and enough subs to run with you guys this year. Man, get on it. Yeah, and hey, register for the event because it's going to help you a ton when the community gets behind you and starts subbing, and then like YouTube will start subbing, and everything will work out fine for you. But get in there and get registered for the event because then John can get you on the roster and he'll get you in the what's those the workshops,
Mm-hmm.
um, the content creators workshop, and it'll help you mold and build your videos and tag them properly and title them properly so that people actually see them. And that's the biggest problem with this is people will wait till the last minute. Oh, I finally got my 400 or my 500 subs, and it's September the 4th. Now I'm going to register. Well, if you would have registered back in like May or June, you would have had your 500 subs by
Yeah.
August,
The
right?
main thing is make sure you make content. You've got to
Be
make
consistent.
content
Yeah, be
consistent.
consistent about it. Yeah. Blue Garage registering for the No Name 500 will do wonders for your sub count. That's correct. That's the same thing I was just saying. And Dylan Levi saying, put your content out and get your car ready. He believes in it. And I'm telling you, even if you
Absolutely.
don't get your 500, look, and you've been at the past too, so you know this to be true. The first year, there was 3 participants that didn't have their 500, right? And they showed up anyway at the event. Car there, ready to go, camping the whole 9 yards. One of them was Mopar's Mustangs and minivans. One of them was Dizzy Izzy. One of them was, I don't know, there was a third one because I got a video of them. But either way, they were at the gate panhandling for subs. They got a few there and there, here and there. And then Dizzy Izzy ended up getting all his subs by the first night, and he was in. So if those guys can do it, anyone can. I promise you that. So even if you don't make your numbers, show up at the event. You're going to get your subs.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Oh, there you go. John saying the next content creator workshop is 4/21 at 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's coming up here soon in 2 weeks. So, and that'll be on the John Wilburn channel. So, and here's Bear Rose Garage. He was one of the guys that literally the first year was started from zero subs and made it to 500 before the event. And all he did was stick to doing what we told him, at the content creator workshops, and just gave him some feedback, and he just stuck to it. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So John saying he'll have Buck and Bear Rose on my channel 4/21 to help the No Name 500 guys. You can do it.
Absolutely. We were all No Name 500s at some point.
Yeah. What are you sitting at now, Andy? You're like 500,000?
No. Right around 38,000 right now.
Oh, wow. You're killing it, man. I thought you were like, I'm just cresting 2,800 right now. But I got to put some, well, I haven't put some content on it in a long time. Life's just been too rough.
And I understand that.
Let's see. Mohawk 62. See, there you go. Just became your 48th sub, Blue Grit Garage. Yeah, keep going. You'll get it. Oh, Clint's wanting to know, is anyone from the No Name Nationals community are going to the Mini Truck Nationals in Maggie Valley?
That'll be close to me. Or closer. It's about 3 hours away.
Bear Rose says, I'll give you all the tricks I learned from Dallas that really boosted me. Thanks again for that, Dallas. I didn't really do anything. I told you exactly what Uncle Tony had told me. But that trick worked for you, and I'm glad it did. You just got to be consistent with your content.
Yep.
That's it.
If you post a video once a week, you'll make it no problem.
Yeah. John says he's known us, Dallas and Andy, since we were No Name 500 guys before it was a thing. There was like 3 ins in that. It was like no name nostalgia 500, because I mean, like, we literally, there was no reason to do it. We were just doing it to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, there was nothing there.
In fact, I knew you before I even started doing YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Andy was one of my first members for the AHRA.
Yeah.
Yep. So, oh, man. Let's see. Mini Nats or the weekend of the 20th. Would love to see Andy out there watching the after show cruise. Oh.
The 20th.
Michael Schmidt says that UTG has over 300,000 subs. Oh, I don't know. That surprised me.
Well, the thing about it is, look at how many videos he puts out. And there you go.
It's just consistent about it.
Consistent.
Yeah, he just consistently posts. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. Some of them are just, but he's consistent. He puts stuff out like every couple of days. And people watch it. But that's all you got to do to get your 500. You'll have them in no time, buddy. I promise. But that's. Can you believe that was 2 hours, Andy?
That's hard to believe, man. It flies by. This is almost like dyno time.
Yeah, except we're going to flip the lid on our air cleaner right at the beginning of the show.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah. But that's all I guess that's going to be it for this Wednesday night. I'd like to thank Andy for being here, and
thank you for having me here.
No problem. I'll see if Professor P can fill your big shoes next week. I don't know if you're up for doing another one, but I'll shoot you a text message here. I guess in the next week or so, find out if you're willing. And other than that, I don't really have much to say. Do you got anything that you want to pedal, Andy?
No, everybody in the chat, you really do need to register for the No Name Nationals. It's going to be a killer event this year. Vizard's planning on coming this year with his EcoBoost Mustang, so that's going to be great. So you'll get to meet him. I'm looking forward to just being there with Casper for a change. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
don't
and
even care if
Casper's
I
going
make
to
a
be
pass. I'm going to drive it there and I'm going to race it. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to drive it home.
well, and you were talking about you might do what is it, No Name Nationals, and then the Fun Ford Weekend thing up in Bowling Green.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I don't live far from there. I might just
I'm
tow
doing
up
my
there.
own drag week.
I might just tow up there and let her eat there again. I
I
don't know
would
what I'm
love
going
to
to
do
do.
that.
Yeah, I tell you what, I wouldn't mind match racing the guy that has that Coyote T-Bird.
Yeah, that would be an awesome one.
Yeah, because he's running about the same times.
Yeah,
I think he's running like 940s or 950s.
it would be good.
Yeah,
Seeing
but
both of y'all leaving wheels up. Oh, yes.
oh, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to do something. I think this year I need to get that 60 foot back. It normally does like 125, 60 foot, and it's at
Yeah.
135 all the whole entire time at No Name Nationals. So, but I guess it's been 2 hours.
Yep.
We're going to let you guys get back to your regular scheduled program. We will see you next Wednesday.
Have a good one, y'all.